I'm Tom from Do-It-Yourself Home Automation, and sorry for the delay in going live here. I'm here to talk about the new Fitbit Sense smartwatch. You can read my full review at 10.medium.com. I'm here today to actually answer questions about the smartwatch. So here it is, the new Fitbit Sense. This just came out today. You can read again my full review. It's about a 13-minute read, so I go into a ton of detail. It is at 10.medium.com, you can learn a lot about what I've been seeing so far. Yeah, this is live. Thanks for the question over there. Today I'm coming here to talk about the review and to answer reader questions people have sent in. Feel free, because this is live, to ask any questions that you have in the chat, and I'm happy to answer them live here. I'm just going to start in with a few that I've received so far. So one person, Rachel Hellman, wrote in and said, I'm looking to change from my Samsung Watch Active 2 to the Sense. Seen a few reviews which are disappointing and wondering what you think. People are saying it's clunky in the software department. The heart rate data isn't good. I'm looking for someone to say it's good. Should I go for the Sense from the Active 2? I imagine, you're thinking about switching over to Fitbit there. I think so far, I can be the person to say I think this is good. I do think it is worth buying. I think it depends on what you're going for, though. If you're looking for something that's for fitness tracking and for health tracking especially, I think this is a great option. If you're looking for the most stylish option out there or one of the best UI overall, I think it's still a work in progress. And honestly, I think they launched this really to be ready in time for the holiday season. To get this out, it just comes out today, the 25th of September. So I think they want to have it out in time for Black Friday, and then probably by the end of the year, maybe into the beginning of 2021, they're going to be making improvements to the UI, improvements to how some of the hardware functions. One example of that is there's this solid state button on the side, and it's a little bit clunky at the moment, but I think the software for that will probably make improvements over time, and you're probably going to see better functionality. The heart rate data so far to me looks pretty good. I think it's not going to be as accurate as a heart rate monitor that's using like an Ecg lead on your chest or something like that. But, so far for me, it does look fairly accurate. I'm going to test this in a longer review, again, at 10.medium.com. About a month, I'll come out with another review that looks at my perspectives after, a month or so of using the watch. So I'll look at this and I'll compare it to some professional heart rate monitoring equipment. But so far, it does look pretty good. One thing to note, though, is it depends on the person and it depends on how you're wearing the watch. So if you're wearing it higher up on your arm or it's looser, you might get differences in the reading. If you're exercising, you're sweating, that can change the reading. And also certain people, depending on your skin color, actually, there's some research that indicates that people with darker colored skin, the Pure Pulse technology that they have on here is not quite as accurate with some of that, apparently. I think they're making improvements, and apparently they've made improvements already in the Sense. So far I think heart rate looks okay, but we'll have to see after about a month of wearing it. I'm going to do a more in-depth review, so we can look into that a bit more at that point. I see another question here, show how the bands are removed. Yeah, so this is one of the features that Fitbit is really pushing here, is the idea that you can easily swap the band out. So this is the silicone band that it comes with. Overall, I think it's a lot better than the band on the Versa and some of the earlier watches. Before, they had this weird little sliding thing, and you would have to put this in and then clasp it into the sliding bit. The little sliding bit would often break off, and then you wouldn't actually be able to use it. I ended up having to cut the end of the band off to accommodate it. Now they say it's easy. I actually haven't done it yet, so let's try to do it here together. So here's the back of the watch. They say that you can just press this button in to release the band. Let's see whether I can. Yep, there we go. So that just pops right off. And then to put a new one on, they say you can just flip it back in. So let's do that. Yep, there we go. So it is really super easy to do that. And if you go to the Fitbit website, I do link to it from the review on Medium's 1.0. You can actually see they have some designer bands that you can purchase. So if you want something a little more stylish than this, you can easily, as you saw, swap that in and out. And just basically press this little clasp button down on the back and then pop the band out. Do it again. And then pop it back in. Hopefully that helps. So much better than the last one. Yeah, definitely better than the Versa. I definitely, lost the little claspy piece there very quickly on mine. And I ended up getting actually an aftermarket band that basically mirrors the design you see here and the design you see on the Apple Watch. Another question, do you get notifications from Outlook, Facebook, etc.? That's a great question. So there are notifications. I know you can get text message notifications so far on it. I don't know about getting notifications from Outlook or Facebook. I know that one thing that they're working on that I don't think is live quite yet is the ability to actually respond to text messages from the phone using your voice. So it does have a microphone built in, and the idea is you get a message and then you can respond with your voice. I think that's going to be an Android-only function, at least in the beginning, though, but that is something that's coming along. I think probably to get good notifications, you're probably going to need to use something that's going to have a native app, but you can swipe down from the top of the screen and get your notifications on here. I don't have any at the moment, but I think it's going to be more, text messages, incoming calls, that kind of thing, unless there's a native app that goes along with it. Is it laggy? This is a great question. This is something that another person had written in and asked. Marco said, seems the performance is really poor. What do you think about it? The menus are definitely a little bit laggy. And it's kind of challenging, so I'll try to swipe over here and go through some of these menus. Some of the swipe gestures, as you're seeing, it kind of takes a little time, and sometimes you have to do the gesture twice. So you can see the time it's taking to go from screen to screen here. I'll pull up an actual app, so let's pull up the exercise app here, and you can see the time it takes to load and to move through the menus. One thing that I think is definitely laggy and a little bit weird is that solid state button on the side. If you do press it, then you have to press it all the way in and cover it fully with your finger. And I find it takes a little time to respond. And what it actually does, it takes you back to the main menu instead of just going back one layer in the menu. So if I press this in, you can see what happens. So I just put my finger on it, trying to cover it, trying to get that press. And then that's how long it takes, even once I get it, to go back to the menu. So I think UI, there's definitely some things here that will probably need some improvement. My guess is that it's not having to do with the processing power of the watch itself. It's probably, again, just that they're trying to ship this really quickly, get it out by the holidays, and then they're probably going to make some firmware updates and other kinds of things that end up improving the speed on that. I don't find it really changes things too much in terms of the use of it day to day, but what's definitely been annoying is using that button, because you saw I had to try 3 or 4 times before I could even press it. And then once I do press it correctly, let's try to do it again. Yep, got it. Okay, pressed it for too long. Now we've got Alexa. So I think that's definitely something that I'm hoping Fitbit's going to improve over time. Let's see. Bezels look pretty huge. Do you think they are too big? So 2 questions. When you say bezel, you're talking about the thickness of the watch and its form factor, or the actual physical bezel around the size. I'll try to hold this closer so you can see. And the reason I ask is there's 2 factors that I think are going to affect each of those things around the screen. Yeah, thanks. So the thickness of the actual watch I can get to, but the bezels around the screen, the reason that it is so big is that there's actually a sensor built into that. So I'll see if you can see it, if my camera will focus properly here. You can see that there's a little break in the bezel right here. Yeah, I think you can see it in focus now. And there's a corresponding one on the other side. And the reason is that these 2 pieces are actually conductive. And so one of the functions that you can do on this is this EDA scan. You can see the icon for it. And with that, you actually cup the whole front of the watch in your hand, and it's actually reading the electrical conductance of your skin through that sensor built into the bezel. And it actually gives you a reading for your skin's galvanic response, or EDA. And that's actually a way to measure stress. And they're using that to measure physiological stress. And they put it into a stress metric in the Fitbit app. And you can drill down into that if it's premium. So I think that's why you're noticing that the bezel is really big. I think it's probably because they're making room to accommodate that EDA sensor. The other thing that the sensor Fitbit tells me is going to be used for is for Ecg readings. So you'll actually be able to take an electrocardiogram reading on the watch. That got FDA approval. I can look and see what exactly that approval was. Let me see. They just told me that they got approval on that, I think about a week ago. So just before the, and I should say, 10medium, 10.medium.com. I got the watch so that I could review it there. I'm not paid by Fitbit. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. They gave me some info about the watch, but this is a totally independent review, so it's not sponsored content. It's nothing like that, just to make sure that's totally clear. And if you do want to read, if you're just tuning in, you want to read my full review, go to 10.medium.com, and it is live there. 510K clearance from the FDA for the ECG app. They also got a CE mark for Europe, which means this is actually medically cleared to test your heart rhythms. And again, that sensor is going to be the same electrical conductance sensor that's built into the bezel. So that's why you're noticing that it's huge. I don't find it's terrible. I mean, it's actually, if you compare the form factor to the Versa, it's actually basically the same. I think one of the things that makes the bezel look bigger on this one is that the actual division between the screen and the bezel itself is a little bit better. So the screen actually goes out a little bit further than you can necessarily see here. And so you do get more usable space on there, even if the bezel itself looks bigger. I think you're actually getting a little bit more screen real estate. And one question I also got was about the screen itself. How does the resolution look? I actually think that's one of the strongest suits so far, at least compared to my Versa, the original Versa. This looks a lot better. It's an AMOLED screen. I believe it's 360 pixels square, so it doesn't seem huge. But when you think about the fact that this is probably a little bit over an inch square, then you're talking about 300 pixels in each direction squeezed into an inch. It's like a 300 dpi screen, so that's a pretty good resolution. And with the AMOLED screen, you're getting pretty good dark values and pretty good colors on there. So that was something I was actually really happy about when I first pulled it up. You can see they've sort of taken advantage of that with the stock clock face on here. That you get some pretty colorful readouts, and especially as you go into like the Today app, for example. I'll pull that up, and you actually get to see some of your walking data and sleep data and that kind of thing. You can see that they do a pretty good job of displaying this. And I like that you can drill down. I'll go down if you have Fitbit Premium. You can drill down and get sleep scores and graphs and things like that I think are kind of helpful. Let's see. If you have any questions, so this is live. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the live chat. I'm happy to answer questions, any questions that you have, show any functions on the watch. We pull up some more user questions that people sent in advance. I'd like to see, Rachel Hellman also said, I'd like to see a software review and a fitness review for the Fitbit Sense. I think I talked a little bit about the software. In terms of fitness, I can go into some of the fitness tracking here. Let me actually pause here, though. I see a live comment. How often are you having to charge it? That's a great question. I just did a video actually about battery life on the watch. And so Fitbit claims it's got a 6-day battery life. Based on my own experience so far, I think that's probably pretty accurate with one caveat. And that is the fact that you have to turn off the always-on display on the watch. And that basically means that, when you're not using the watch, the screen will actually time out. I think it's like a 30-second timeout or something like that. And it'll go to full black. And then to wake it up again, you actually have to mash that weird little solid state button or flick your wrist in a way that it can detect that you've done that. And then it'll pull up the screen and you can actually see the time and everything. The other option is to switch on, let's see, try to go over here. The other option is to switch, and you can see this interface is a little bit weird. To switch on the always-on display, my swipes are not really accomplishing anything here. But you can go over and switch on the always-on display. That's over here, so I switched it off. I can switch that on, always-on display, and that means that the watch is always going to display, even if I don't, if I haven't switched it on. The light will actually be on, so if you find lights at night to be bothersome, then that might be a problem. And the other thing that does is it reduces your battery life pretty substantially. So from the 6 days that Fitbit claims, that I think so far seems relatively reasonable from my own testing, you go down to having only about a 2 to 3 day battery life if you're using the always-on display. So that's something definitely to be aware of. And if you want to have the screen on all the time, you want to be able to just glance down at it without moving your wrist, then you're looking at 2 to 3 days of battery life. Otherwise, about 6 days. The good thing is it does charge pretty fast. I find it only takes a couple of hours, maybe even less, to get back up to full battery. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. Follow-up question: does the screen wake up quickly when always on display is turned off? Well, let's take a look. So I'm going to switch off the always on display so that's disabled. Go, got that. Let's put it on the wrist, and I will try to wake it up. Let's let it time out first, obviously. So this is a good opportunity to show the clasp on here. I'm going to go ahead and put this on. So this little pin goes through, and then the end part of the band just tucks in. So that goes on pretty well. I'm going to give it a moment here to time out. In the meantime, yep, actually it took no time at all. So let's flick. Basically, you can flick your wrist up, and you can see it comes back on when you do that. So you can check the time, and then it should time out again. I find you need a pretty aggressive, you have to make it pretty clear to the watch that you're flicking your wrist up to try to get it to switch on. But when you do, so far I found that does work reasonably well. You can also, again, mash the button on the side, and that'll switch it back on as well. The one thing that I find is a challenge with that is just the fact that, if you're, probably not in a lot of physical meetings or anything right now, but if you are and you're sitting there like flicking your wrist or, pressing the button, that just looks a little bit strange. So sometimes it's nice to just be able to glance at your wrist. If you can live with the lower battery life, I'd say that's probably a better option. But if you want that full 6 days of battery life, then you're going to have to deal with the wrist flick or pressing the button to wake it up again. Somebody said, I'll get mine tomorrow, and I hope I like it. It's originally going for the Versa 3. I decided to take this one. Yeah, I think that's it's a good thing to talk about, the differences and why you might want to get the Sense. I think to me the biggest factor with this is that it's a really great health watch, and I go into a lot of detail on some of the features and the health features on that review on 1.0. It's about a 13-minute read, so I'll actually put the link into the chat down here if anybody wants to go have a look. But my conclusion about it really is that this is the best health watch on the market right now. And so if you're looking for something that's not necessarily for health tracking, if you're looking at something that's going to be more just for basic step tracking and that kind of thing, then I think that it's the other watches from Fitbit are probably a good option. But this one, I think they're going to really build in the stress management. They're going to build in the ECG. And I think they're really going to really emphasize the health aspects. And again, you're getting a lot of hardware to do that. It's not just software things. So you're getting that EDA sensor. You're getting the ability to do an ECG reading. There's a skin temperature sensor on the back here, so it can potentially detect if you have a fever. There's a lot of new sensors that they're putting in here that you wouldn't have with the other smartwatches. So it's probably not something where they're just going to push out a firmware update and add those functions to the other watches. If you want them, you probably do want to go for the Sense. So it's really about your priorities. Are you willing to spend a little bit more, maybe sacrifice a little bit in terms of form factor in order to have a watch that does the best-in-class health tracking? If that's not as important to you, then you might want to go for one of the other models. One question, is the ECG working, or do you have to wait for an update? Yeah, you have to wait for an update for the ECG. They just got approval on it about a week ago. And so it's not out there yet. I did ask Fitbit about that. See exactly what they said back about it. It will be available to users on Fitbit Sense in the US and select countries in Europe and Asia by October 2020. So before Black Friday, which is probably a good choice for them, you will be able to use the ECG, they say. It will be cleared by the FDA in the United States, and it will have a CE mark in the EU. So that's really great. It means that it's actually medical quality, not as good as probably what you would get at a cardiologist's office, but a medical quality reading. And what they want to use that for is detecting heart conditions like atrial fibrillation, AFib. And that can be a really serious condition. A lot of people might not even know that they have it. So having the ability to test for that right on your watch really easily, I think is great. And probably the way it's going to work is you would cup your hand over the sensor. There's a separate app that'll do the reading, and they've shown some kind of teasers of what this will look like ultimately, but you'll get an actual ECG chart that you could show to your doctor, and they'll also scan and tell you if you could potentially have AFib or another condition. There's two other heart conditions that they're looking at. I think it's called, I forget the medical name, so I'm not going to try to guess it. But it's basically when your heart goes too fast or too slow. And they have some sensing that can look at that and see what your baseline heart rate is, and then look if your heart is going too fast or too slow, and they can flag that and tell you that that's concerning. So I have another question here. People are upset that you can't load MP3s onto the Sense. Have I got a Deezer or Spotify subscription? Try these music apps. That's a great question. I have not actually tested the music streaming yet. My understanding so far, just from looking at some of the review materials from Fitbit, I didn't see any references to loading music onto the watch like you've been able to do in previous Fitbits. I think they are pushing you towards Deezer or Spotify, as you point out in there. That was mentioned in some of the materials that I got. And you can see these are the stock apps that are loaded onto the watch. Spotify is right there. It's one of them. Deezer and Pandora are the other ones. So what I did here from Fitbit is that you can load music from some of these services onto the watch. And it sounds like, it's not 100% clear to me, but it sounds like you can put them on there, and then you can listen. They say listen wherever you like, no phone required for Pandora or Deezer. So I think you can load music on there, but I don't know that you can load your own MP3s. It sounds to me like you have to load it through one of these services. And then they say no phone required. So presumably you can play this without having to have it synced with your phone. But the function to put your own MP3s on there that we've seen in the past, it's not immediately clear to me whether that's present or not. The good news with that, though, is that if they did decide to enable it, it would probably just be a software update, maybe a firmware update for the watch. It's not like adding a new sensor, like adding GPS, that you would need to have a new sensor on the actual physical hardware. So that's good anyway. It's something that if there's enough people reaching out about it, then they could presumably actually make that update to it. If you're just joining me, this is a live stream talking about the Fitbit Sense. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I'm answering any kind of user questions come in here. You can also read my full review at 10.medium.com. And I go into a lot of detail. I'm also going to do, this is sort of my first look because the watch just shipped today. I got one about 3 days early. I'm not affiliated with Fitbit in any way. This was purchased by 10 on Medium, so we're totally independent. So that's, I think, important to note. There's not sponsored content or anything like that happening here. So if you do have questions, then go ahead and put them into the chat. And I'll be happy to answer them. Until I see more come in, I'm going to go ahead and go back to some of the questions that people sent in advance. I'm going to pick back up where we were talking about fitness on here. So health, obviously, is one thing that they're doing well with this watch. Tracking some of your health-related stats, looking at stress, looking at heart rate, looking at ultimately the ECG, but fitness is another thing that Fitbit does really well. So you can go into the exercise app here. You can choose the different exercise that you want to do. So you have a lot of different options. Let's see if you can see these here. Biking, circuit training, elliptical, golf. So you can log all these different things. A hike or a walk is obviously a popular one. When you start that, it's actually going to start by using the GPS. I'm indoors now, so it's probably not going to connect. But you can see as you're going, you get all of this useful data. So pace, average pace, you can get your heart rate. It's not measuring because it's not actually on my wrist. Calories burned, you got the time that's counting up here. Number of steps in that exercise. I think this is going to give, let me see, as it's showing here, just the time. And then you can get your number of peak minute zones there. This is, going back to the time. Let me see if we've got anything else. Distance, if you're doing a run or a hike or something like that. So you're getting a lot of stats in here. And then when you're done with the exercise, you can either pause or you can stop. You'll get a summary at the end. So it's saying way to go, and it'll go in and give me a summary, some of the data on there. And then you can actually pull this up. So it's giving me 45 seconds, my average heart rate, number of calories, that kind of thing. And then you can go into your app, your Fitbit app on your phone, and you can actually pull up, if you did a map or a exercise with GPS, you can actually get a map in the app of the run or hike that you did. You can actually see exactly where you walked, and you can see some detailed breakdowns on calories burned throughout the exercise, when you were working harder, when you weren't working as hard, that kind of thing. So it's definitely, I think, good fitness tracking in there too. And that's what you'd expect from Fitbit. That's why to buy this versus, an Apple Watch or something, because they really do fitness and health tracking, I think, better than anybody else. Let me take a look at some other questions. Again, if you have your own questions, feel free to put them into the chat. One person wrote in, DRRCK1115 wrote in and said, I'm concerned about getting scratches on it. The shiny metal trim gives it a premium look. I'm seriously considering getting it. I think they're concerned about scratches and damage. So one thing I would say, the screen itself uses Gorilla Glass. So it's the same thing you would have on your phone screen, and that should be pretty strong. It shouldn't really scratch up. I've had the Versa for over a year, and I never had any problems with scratching or damage on that. The bezel around the side and the sensor there, that's definitely one we'll have to monitor over time, because that's definitely sort of a shiny metal surface. I don't know if you're going to run into issues with conductivity being degraded over time by scratches and that kind of thing. That's why I'm going to do, in addition to the review I posted on 1.0 on Medium so far, that was sort of a first look before this even came out. I'm also going to be doing some longer term coverage where I talk about this, at a month. We can start to check in and see, and you can subscribe to my channel here. I'll do videos about it too. So we'll see if that ends up becoming a problem. But, the glass itself, I think, is probably pretty good. The bezel and the sides, that's definitely something we'll have to be aware of and continue to monitor on that. I think it is a metal material there, though. I don't think it's like a shiny plastic, because again, that's a conductive surface that's being used for the ECG readings. So that's probably a good sign that we have, probably less damage there over time than if it was just a shiny kind of plastic. The band will almost definitely wear out and break. Fitbit has not had a great track record with bands. At least they no longer kind of injure your skin, but there was a time period where they were causing dermatological problems because people weren't washing them enough. Now I think they're pretty good on that, but this is a silicone band. It'll probably wear out over time. That's why they do make it, as I showed really early in this live stream, pretty easy to go in and fix and replace. And you can get more premium bands that give it a sort of a nicer look. One question I had gotten was about how do you make it look nice in a business context? If you're meeting with a client, whenever that's possible again. You can use a nicer band on there. And again, if you go to the review on 1.0, I linked to the Fitbit website, and you can see some of those designer bands for the watch. I got another question about MP3 storage. I think we addressed. Yeah, I think if you use one of the built-in apps, you can do that. But other than that, it seems like, at least as far as I can tell, I don't see a function to be able to load your own MP3s. Okay, so I'll open it up. Those are the reader questions I got in advance. If anybody else has any other questions, any functions you want me to demo here, please go ahead and put those in the comments here, and I'm happy to address them. Otherwise, if there's nothing else, no more comments coming in, I encourage you subscribe to my channel here. I'll be doing a ton of videos about the Sense. Feel free to email me, Tom, T-O-M, at GadoImages.com, GADOIMAGES.com. I'll put that in the chat as well. Ask any questions that you might have, and I'm happy to answer them on the channel. You can also tweet at me, Tom Smith, TOMSMITH 585. Follow me there for more updates. And then the final thing is that 1.0 article goes into a ton more detail than I've gone into here about everything on the watch from my initial impressions. It's a 13-minute read, and you can follow me there on Medium to see updates and to see especially my sort of impressions after I've gotten to wear this for a longer time period. So any last questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. And if not, thank you so much for tuning in. Stay in touch, and we're going to continue to explore the Fitbit Sense and learn about it together. So thanks so much.